I am using a monopod to film my July wrap-up. Hi everyone, it's Clarice, and it's the end of July, so it's time for me to film my July wrap-up, even though there have been a few obstacles. So what happened is, my camera broke, so I got another camera, and I used the same SD card, but now I think the SD card's broken. So now I'm on my phone, using a monopod to film my July wrap-up. I've never used a monopod before. It's weird. And I think my arm's gonna hurt after a while because I'm holding this the whole time. So anyway, this month I've been in some sort of weird anti-reading slump. I managed to read 11 novels, 9 graphic novels / comic book volumes / illustration heavy books, 2 novellas, 1 children's book, 1 essay collection, and 1 miscellaneous book. For a total of 25 books. How did I do that? I don't know. So anyway, clearly I've read a lot of books, and clearly I'm tired of filming this video multiple times, so might as well just go ahead straight to the books. For obvious reasons, I'm not going to try holding up all these books I'm holding a monopod. I'm just going to insert pictures for all of them. Anyway, since last month I read the first 2 books in the series, I figured this month I might as well finish up the series and read the last 3 books. And that series is the Hitchhikers Guide series by Douglas Adams. And this month I read the last 3 books, namely Life, the Universe, and Everything, So Long and Thanks for All the Fish, and Mostly Harmless. This whole series starts with a man named Arthur Dent, who through a series of events witnesses the destruction of his entire planet, learns that the universe is actually a lot bigger than he thought it was, and ends up traveling with probably the most unlikely and the most crazy group of beings that he can possibly end up with. To say that this series is weird would be a gross understatement. This series is hilarious, insanely quotable, nothing makes sense, everything makes sense. The answer to life, the universe, and everything is 42. Overall, I enjoyed it, though I probably enjoyed the first book more than the others. It's definitely not my favorite series or anything, but it was a fun ride. Next, I read Why the Last Man, Book 4, which is in the deluxe edition, so this actually includes 2 volumes in 1. So this contains 7 and 8 volumes. If you didn't already know, Why the Last Man is a series that begins with the end. It begins with the end of all men on the planet. This includes humans and animals alike. Well, all men except for the main character Yorick and his monkey, Ampersand. This series as a whole I love because it shows some present day issues and problems through this future unlikely scenario. It also has some pretty kick-butt female characters, which is always awesome, and overall it's just really engrossing and really difficult to put down. I love the series as a whole, but I think I enjoyed this series of volumes the most so far, just because it gave us some background to some of the other characters in this series. I love the series, and I can't wait to finish it up by reading the last 2 volumes in it. If you haven't checked it out and you enjoy a comic book series, I suggest you check it out. Next this month, I also listened to an audiobook, that audiobook being an Unwelcome West, which is the 3rd book in the Magic 2.0 series by Scott Meyer. This series as a whole starts with a man named Martin. One day Martin finds a strange file, and after tinkering with this file a little bit, he finds out and realizes that the entire universe is actually contained and controlled by this one file. So he uses this file to make his life a lot easier. Eventually he gets caught and then decides that the most logical course of action for him to take is to go back in time to medieval England and pose as a wizard. The series is so much fun. Overall, it's really funny, really geeky, which I love. I also highly recommend the audiobook. I listened to the 2nd and 3rd books in audiobook, and I really like the narrator. He does voices really well. There's a whole bigger story just threading through all the books. What I love about the series is that each book on its own is its own adventure. The first book kind of dealt with explaining the magic and the world in general. The 2nd book dealt with time travel and time travel paradoxes. And the 3rd book kind of dealt with video games and video game design. I have to say that I like the 3rd book the least, just because it kind of dragged a bit at times, but I still really like this series, and I still really think you should check it out. Not enough people talk about it, I think, but it's such a fun series. If you like geeky things, if you like funny things, if you want just to have a lot of fun, I suggest you read this series. Check it out. It's really cheap in the Kindle store most of the time. At this point in the month, I signed up for a 2-month free subscription on Scribd. If I remember to, I'll leave a link down below for you to take advantage of this because I'm loving script so far. But the first script book I ever read was Hyperbole in Half by Ali Brosh. If you didn't already know, Hyperbole in Half is actually a blog. So this book is kind of just that blog in book form. In this blog and in this book, Ali Brosh just shares her funny anecdotes from her life along with her charming illustrations. While like I said, these anecdotes are really funny, this book actually dealt with some deeper things. At one point, it talks about depression, but I like the way that it dealt with it. The way that Ali explained her experience, I felt that I was able to understand her better. I don't by any means feel that, as someone who hasn't experienced depression herself, that I could even begin to imagine what it feels like to be in that state. But at the same time, when I read this book, I felt that I got her. I love Ali's personality. It really shows in this book. I like her sense of humor, but I also like how genuine and real she is. Ali's great. This book is great. I suggest that you at least check out her blog. She's really funny and really genuine. Next, I listened to my first script audiobook, which is The Ocean at the End of the Lane, written by Neil Gaiman and read by Neil Gaiman. This is basically just a story about the strange and magical childhood of this unnamed boy. Even if I wanted to, I don't think I could really explain what this book's about. But it kind of felt like this really odd fairy tale, which I really enjoyed. And also reading this book made me feel like a child again. In addition to that, Neil Gaiman reading this audiobook was just perfect. So if you're trying to look for a good audiobook to listen to, I would definitely recommend this one. I definitely recommend this book, especially if you like books with a very distinct atmosphere to them. At this point in the month, the Cramathon happened and I participated. I ended up being able to read 6 books, namely Through the Woods by Emily Carroll, So Long and Thanks for All the Fish by Douglas Adams, Perfect State, a novella by Brandon Sanderson, The Little Prince by someone whose name I'd rather not try to pronounce, Identical by Ellen Hopkins, and Men Explain Things to Me by Rebecca Solnit. I've already filmed the Cramathon wrap-up, so if you're interested in hearing my thoughts on any of those books, I will leave the link down below. Next, I read Wool, which is the first book in the Silo series by Hugh Howey. This book is set in this massive underground community called the Silo. The people living in this community only vaguely really remember how they got there. They only know it had something to do with this crazy rebellion, but now they're safe. Even though life in the Silo isn't necessarily the greatest, they figure it's probably at least better than the alternative. The alternative being the death of the entire human race. I really wanted to like this book. The rating of Goodreads was really good, like 4.25 or something ridiculous like that. But unfortunately, this book just didn't work for me. I talked about this more, I think, on my Goodreads review of the book, which I'll link down below. But generally, the main problem I had with this is just that it didn't really feel real. When I read a book, I want to be immersed in it. I want to be able to lose myself in the world and in the characters. And most importantly, I just want to be convinced. And this book just didn't convince me that it was real. I think it was just a mix of the sometimes flimsy concept execution, the plot holes, and just the characters whose actions weren't really consistent with my idea of them and what they would do in my head. Sure, there were times that I found the plot very engrossing and very interesting and intense, but it just wasn't enough to overshadow my overall thoughts on this book. Clearly, a lot of people love this book, so you shouldn't dismiss it simply based on my opinion. But I don't know, personally, I just wasn't impressed. Next this month, I read You by Carolyn Kepnes. I've already posted a full review of this book, so I will link that down below. But basically, this book follows the point of view of a stalker. Extremely unsettling, especially at certain points. I love seeing things from Joe's point of view because I really like hearing his perspective on things. He has this really just blunt attitude towards life and people and society, but also because he's a psycho, and that's interesting. If we're being completely honest here, I was a bit underwhelmed considering how much I just hyped this book up in my head. But it's still a really good book, really creepy, really unsettling. I would definitely still recommend it if it sounds interesting to you at all. This month, I read an entire comic book series. I've been wanting to read this series for a while, and I saw that it was on Scribd, and so the other week I just decided, why not? I'll start it, and then I continued it, and then I finished it. And that series is the Lock and Key series by Joe Hill and Gabriel Rodriguez. I'll post a full review of this sometime soon, just because I loved it so much and I have so many thoughts. But it's basically a series about a Locke family tragedy. Hits this family pretty early on in the book, at the very beginning, actually. And after this, the family moves into this old family house called the Key House. And upon exploring the Key House, the locked children eventually discover that this house is full of different keys. And these keys are magical. They open different doors and do different things and have different powers and have a lot of fun, but they realize soon enough that by unlocking all these doors, they're actually also unlocking secrets. Secrets about the tragic past of their family and of the house. The series has everything. It's creepy, it's suspenseful, it has beautiful, beautiful art. It had some characters that I really grew attached to. Overall, it was awesome. Definitely my favorite comic book series as of right now. And if you haven't checked it out and you like comic books, I suggest you check it out. It's amazing. Next, I finished The Host, which is a book I actually read like a third of in April and then just put down for no real reason. So I decided to finish it finally. I actually just posted a full review of this, which I will link down below, so I won't talk about it too long. But it's basically about these aliens that take over the human race. I liked hearing about the alien culture. The plot was interesting enough, though the romance and the messages were kind of cheesy at times. And also, especially at the beginning, it definitely dragged at times. But I still enjoyed it overall. The next book I read was a novella, The Life Cycle of Software Objects by Ted Chiang. It is actually free to read, so I will link it down below in case you're interested in it at all. This story starts with this software company that is able to create these digital pets called DigiEnts. The company was able to create an AI that learned constantly, and so we have to train these DigiEnts like normal pets. And they are pretty much like normal pets, except they're super intelligent and of course digital. This story dealt with a lot of themes such as the lines between what's digital and what's real, and the rights of an AI that is artificial but intelligent enough to be able to make its own decisions and think for itself. From a software engineering student's standpoint, it was actually extremely interesting. Dealt with some issues that may end up being extremely relevant to me and to my field in the future. And while it was interesting in that sense, since it was a novella, it had to cut corners somewhere, and I think the places where it sacrificed the most were in the plot and in the characters. It didn't really have much of a plot really. Again, it just kind of showed these DigiEnts and how they grew and dealt more with the themes than with anything else. I was glad I read this because it definitely made me think. Was it particularly fun to read? No, not really. Was it engrossing and was it really hard to put down? No. Is it something that I think everyone can enjoy? Probably not, but I appreciated it a lot and I enjoyed it for what it was. Next this month, I read a book that I've been excited to read ever since last year when I read Ready Player One by the same author, and that book is Armada, the second book by Ernest Cline. I will probably again post a full review of this, so I won't dwell on it too long, but basically it is a book about space, about aliens, about video games come to life. I did enjoy it for the most part. I still managed to read it fairly quickly, but it was a disappointment, I'm not gonna lie. And lastly this month, I read Diary by Chuck Palahniuk. It's a story about art, a story about a weird and mysterious town, a story about inspiration and pain, and ultimately a story that I don't think I'd be able to explain properly even if I wanted to. The first half of this book dragged quite a bit. I found myself having a very hard time reading it. Part of the reason was because I didn't realize this going into it. This isn't a book that has a very distinct plot, so most of the time there were all these things happening. I didn't really know where they were leading. Also, it was hard to read this book because it's kind of written in the second person. It's written in diary format, as you would expect, and the person writing the diary is mostly writing in second person to her husband. But what I also found weird was that the person writing the diary referred to herself in the third person. But I think the bigger problem with that is it was hard for me to kind of imagine who the first person in this situation was. I would imagine it as her, and then kind of start getting into the book, and then suddenly she would refer to herself as the third person, and then that would pull me out of the book immediately. And so I had a hard time just immersing myself in this book and in the story, especially in the first part. By the time I reached the second half, I was more used to the writing, but I still found the plot pretty uneventful. Later on though in the book, it got pretty intense, it got pretty crazy, and then everything started unveiling, and at that point things got more interesting. But ultimately, I don't think the ending was enough payoff for me to love this book despite my experience for most of the first part of the book. It's a strange filming experience, but I made it through, so yay, good for me. Anyway, what was your favorite book that you read this month? Clearly, my favorite was the Lock and Key series by Joe Hill. It was amazing. So please feel free to tell me about your reading month in the comments down below. Also, please like this video if you liked it and subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye!